Peace, Love, Liberty Radio version 4.1. Initializing upgrades. Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Ashes to ashes, we're falling down. Slaves to the men that stole the crown. There's a warning sign, like a blazing sun. You don't want to see because you're having fun. But those who control all the information celebrate and lie to the people to keep them watching.
Hey, this is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. And today is Wednesday. Yeah, you know what that means. You know. Nope. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a giant camel walking behind you yelling, Hump Day! What it does mean is that it's the Ask Me Anything. It's the day where I answer your questions, and I have some pretty interesting questions this week. Question numero uno. What is the best/easiest way to get out of a speeding ticket in Alabama for someone who does not live in Alabama? So allow me to preface this by saying anything you hear me say for the rest of this episode is not legal advice. Now, that's not to say that I have not done some research, because I have. But again, I am not an attorney. I have not gone to law school. In New Hampshire, I could wind up representing you as what they call an attorney in fact. But anybody can do that. So in New Hampshire, they have this thing, and I'm speaking about New Hampshire because that's where I live. In New Hampshire, they have this thing called attorney in fact, to where if you have some legal situation and you can't afford to hire an attorney, but let's say you've got a friend that has, either gone to law school or is just kind of a smart guy and knows the process a little bit, you can fill out a piece of paper to have that person be your attorney in fact, meaning that they are representing you. They are, in the eyes of the court, for that specific case and that case only, they are representing you. Now, the differences are that an attorney in fact has not necessarily gone to law school. The attorney in fact is not a member of the bar. The attorney in fact, is not an actual attorney, but they're acting as one. And again, anybody that is, I forget what the terminology that they use, but basically anybody that the court deems to be on the up and up. So if somebody had been disbarred, then the court might be like, you know what, we're not letting this person be an attorney in fact. If the person has a questionable character, i.e., they've got a fairly long rap sheet for, contempt of court or other sorts of, questioning government authority sort of stuff, the court might be like, no, we're not going to let this person do it. But pretty much anybody else can be an attorney in fact in New Hampshire. And I mention that only because, I know my way around a court a little bit. Not that I've necessarily, been in a lot of legal trouble myself. I have had the occasional speeding ticket. I've been pulled over for not wearing a seatbelt, took that to a jury trial, tried some, legal techniques that I've heard people talk about, was promptly threatened with contempt of court no less than half a dozen times. The jury came back into the room. I got the police officer to admit on stand that he had no physical evidence, and the jury still wound up convicting me in like 5 minutes. That said, I have had some success. I was able to beat a parking ticket a while back because the parking enforcer could not present evidence to the court that the meter was functioning properly, that I had parked at a certain time, that I had put a certain amount of money in the meter, or that the meter kept accurate time. So with that in mind, allow me to now answer the question, what's the best and easiest way to beat a parking ticket or rather a speeding ticket in Alabama for someone who does not live in Alabama? The first set of advice that I have here comes from a website called blurrofinsanity.com. And they say the best way, of course, is to not get a speeding ticket. So we'll deal with that. First, what not to do. Don't be a belligerent idiot. Now, there are some other choice words that they have here that I will not repeat on this show because I do want this show to stay on iHeartRadio. And one of the things that you have to do in order to remain on iHeartRadio is to be radio friendly. That means, like you can't say the 7 dirty words, and there's certain innuendos that are not able to be made. So they say don't be a belligerent idiot. You'll end up with a lot more than just a speeding ticket if you do. More likely, you'll end up in jail with your car impounded. Secondly, do not admit guilt. Don't do it. And again, this is the roadside advice. So when you get pulled over, you know how 90% of the time, the cop will ask something along the lines of, do you know why I pulled you over? Do not answer that question with any affirmative statement. Because you might basically plead guilty or admit guilt to something that the police officer was not pulling you over for. So he could have been pulling you over for not using your turn signal, and you said, oh yeah, I was speeding and not wearing my seatbelt. Good job, you just got 2 more tickets, possibly. Or maybe he was pulling you over for not using the turn signal or for speeding, and you said, oh, I didn't use my turn signal. Whatever. Do not answer that with any kind of answer because you do not actually know why the police officer pulled you over. Now, you may have some speculation. You may have some thoughts on why he pulled you over, but you absolutely do not know why he pulled you over because you are not a mind reader. Say nothing if possible. The cop can use your admission against you in court. It's better to say nothing than to say something stupid. What next? Well, I'll tell you. Stay tuned to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and numerous supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $1 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com. In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake Security Company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? Will anybody care? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
So what do you do if you get pulled over? And yes, I know the question is about what do you do after you've got a speeding ticket in a state that you don't live in? Well, there's still good advice here on what to do if you get pulled over. And the most important thing is do not admit guilt about anything, because you might be admitting guilt to something that the police officer was not pulling you over for. Now, what should you do? And I don't necessarily agree with some of the things of what they say you should do. They say on here, and again, this is from blurrofinsanity.com, they say You should say yes, officer, and no, officer, to everything. You want this to be done with fast. Now, I think that there's a way that you could say this to sound respectful. Maybe you sincerely are trying to be respectful. Or you could also say it in a very sort of condescending isn't really the right term, but more a mocking attitude. And, well, that's not going to generally wind up good for you either. So, no, I don't think you need to use the term officer here. Again, this is just my advice. This is not legal advice. They say, act stupid. It helps because cops don't want to torture stupid people. Next, they say, act scared. As if the ticket means the end of your life. Again, cops waver at this point. They may not write it if they feel sorry for you. Next, they say act ignorant about what you did. Even if they give you a ticket, at least you didn't admit you were speeding, which they could use against you in court. Now, something they do not say on here, but I will, is pull out your cell phone after you've already stopped, put your car in park, and turned the car off. Pull out your cell phone, click on the button that says Cell 411, and then send a notification, I got pulled over, and then begin streaming the interaction. Stream the interaction. Let the officer know, hey, just so you know, I'm filming this encounter, I'm streaming this, because most of the time when cops know that they're being recorded, they're going to be on their best behavior. So let the police officer know that you are recording and stream. Again, I use an app called Cell 411. That's CELL 411. You can go to getcell411.com, go to the app store of your choice, and download Cell 411. No, I am not being paid by Cell 411 to promote that app. It is something I use. And you may have heard some news stories to where, Facebook Live cut this person's video while it was streaming. Yet Cell 411's not going to do that. The guy that runs Cell 411, I know him. He's a good guy. He's an anarchist. He's not going to comply with the state. He's putting this stuff up on a server that governments are not able to get to. And then you can later go into your Cell 411 and download a copy of your video that is not being stored on your phone. It is streaming. So if the cops steal your phone, they can't then necessarily delete the video unless they go into the app and then click on some stuff and be like, I want to delete. But it's very difficult for you to do that, and they're not necessarily going to know what app you're using to stream. So stream your interaction. Now, they have some advice on if you get a ticket, do not argue the situation on the side of the road. You will not win, and, well, one, you won't win. Two, you might not wind up walking away from the situation. You might wind up getting thrown in jail for some sort of, basically, the street term is contempt of cop. The legal term is they'll make something up after they figure it out. And they might even wind up, definitely they'll use it against you in court. But again, the situation could wind up, turning worse. Remember everything about the situation. And something that helps you remember everything about a situation? Yes, that's correct. Video. Having something on video where you can then go back and watch it. Oh, yeah, this happened. And then I said this, and he said this, and then he said this. And then he gave me the ticket and, told me to have a nice day. So, yes, remember everything about the situation after you get the ticket. Now, this varies from state to state. Some places you will mark a guilty or not guilty on the back of the ticket and then send it in. Never mark guilty. Never, ever, 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 ever mark guilty on the back of a ticket. Always mark not guilty. Send it in. Sometimes they'll want you to sign it. Generally, I will put refuse to sign. I've never had a problem where they send it back. You didn't sign this. Now, I have done stuff as a delay tactic, and I'll talk about delay tactics here in a moment. As a delay tactic, most of the time they'll say you've got like 30 days or 28 days or X number of days. Wait until like the next to last day of when the deadline, put it in the mail, only marking not guilty, not signing, not putting refuse to sign. Send it in. They'll then send it back to you. Now, you might get a letter from the Department of State or Department of Safety saying, you refuse to something, we'll suspend your license if you don't, blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as you put, refuse to sign or sign your name and send it back in, then the department of whoever it is sends you another letter saying everything's good, and then you wind up getting your court date. Now, here's where the delay winds up coming in. Again, in New Hampshire, when you send in the ticket saying not guilty, they consider that your arraignment. They will then schedule a pretrial hearing. Now, the pretrial hearing can be waived, or you can wind up going, or another delay tactic is you can wind up sending in a motion to the court. I am unable to make this hearing. Can we postpone this? And every court that I've ever dealt with will give you one automatic postponement, no questions asked. Every court I've ever dealt with. So that's one way to delay. I'll continue here in a moment on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
During the 2013 Porcupine Freedom Festival, Davi Barker presented an idea for a renegade psychological experiment. Since then, he has refined his idea and put his plan and research into writing. He explains, "We aim to show the world beyond a shadow of a doubt that power corrupts absolutely and corrupt authority deserves no obedience." Authoritarian Sociopathy is available from Amazon.com, all major bookstores, and now available as an audiobook. You can support FPP Radio by shopping online. Whether you're looking for precious metals, bitcoins, or books, you'll find that and more at shop.fppradio.com. Every purchase you make from one of my affiliates, like Namecheap, Spendabit, and Amazon at shop.fppradio.com helps fund FPP Radio. Or you can shop directly from FPP with Bitcoin in the Bitcoin store. That's shop.fppradio.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry. Online at fppradio.com.
Why should you delay going to court? Well, there are several reasons. First and foremost is, people forget things, right? Yes, I know I forget things. I know you forget things. Which means police officers forget things. The further out from when the ticket was written, the more likely the police officer will misremember some of the facts of what happened. If you have evidence that the police officer misremembered things, then you increase your chances of being able to convince the judge that there was an incompetent witness testifying against you, which then nullifies all of the testimony given by that police officer. There's also possibilities that the police officer will transfer to another department. Or that, and this, could happen whether you delay or not, police officer might just not show up for the hearing. And that's a good way to wind up getting the case tossed out when there's nobody to testify against you. Now, there are other things that you can do. Request information. And again, I will post this link in the show notes. You can read everything. There's also an article from Forbes that I don't think I'll actually be able to get into because I do have another question. Ask for information about the radar gun or the laser gun or whatever it was that they claimed that they used to say that you were speeding. Find out when that was last calibrated. And if the calibration records are not up to date, then that will then get tossed, and chances of the entire ticket being thrown out increase. Now, I understand that, dealing with court stuff is time-consuming, and you might, do this cost-benefit in your head of, well, it's, easier for me to just pay the $100 than to wind up, learning how to fill out court papers and this and request discovery and all of this other stuff. But I'm guessing that if you're asking how to get out of a speeding ticket or how to beat a speeding ticket, you're not worried about the time that will be involved. Again, there's a lot of information in this article from Blur of Insanity as well as Forbes. And as always, it will be in the show notes. Now, before I jump to the next question for the Ask Me Anything, I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. This company has been around for almost 40 years, since 1977. And in that time, for the last almost 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. Or visit them online at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Now, the next question is about the Do Not Call list. You know, that thing that the government rolled out a while back, and you can, put your telephone number on it, and supposedly you don't get calls from telemarketers. So the question is, how often must one update their status on the Do Not Call list? Now, there's a handy website from the Federal Trade Commission, FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, about the Do Not Call registry. And they actually have a FAQ on their website. And they've got a section titled, When You Might Need to Register Again. And their questions are, how long does my phone number stay registered? And they claim that telephone numbers on the registry don't expire. They only remove a number when it's disconnected or reassigned unless you ask to be removed from the Do Not Call registry. The next question, I moved and got a new telephone number. Do I need to register my new number? And the question is yes, because, again, they will remove numbers when they're disconnected or reassigned, and they don't necessarily know that, oh, yes, Betty Smith changed her telephone number from 555-1919 to 555-2020. They don't know that, so you need to register the new number. Do I need to take my old number off the list when I get a new number? They say no, because the system automatically removes numbers that are disconnected and reassigned. Then there's a question about if the area code changes, and I've lived in an area where this happened at one time, to where they did this area code split. And so the question here is, if my area code changes or splits, do I need to re-register? And they say if the phone company changes your 3-digit area code, you don't have to re-register. Your new number will automatically be registered for you during the 90-day period when both numbers work. And that's, this weird thing that when they, split this new area code or create a new area code, there's a period of time to where both the old area code and the new area code work for the same telephone number. So apparently, according to the FTC, that number will automatically be re-registered. And of course, if you have more questions, they do have an email address here And again, this will be in the show notes, and you can read all of this information at your leisure. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
It is the year 91,001 BCE. Witness humanity's origins in Hyperchronius, a classic role-playing game for Windows PCs with a story like no other game before. A liberty-oriented experience that is not to be missed. Go to zog.ninja to get your copy of Hyperchronius today. Use the code FPP to get $1 off. Hyperchronius, zog.ninja, code FPP.
You can support FPP Radio by joining the Fans program. Fans are friends, allies, and Numery supporters. Fans help FPP afford to produce more original content. You can join the Fans program for as little as $3 per month through Patreon and get perks like ad-free versions of FPP Radio News and Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com. That's fans.fppradio.com.
Hi, I'm Nick Hazelton from the Anarcho-Yakutalism podcast, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Now, you heard me mention that Roberts & Roberts Brokerage accepts Bitcoin. Now, how can you get Bitcoin? No, this is not necessarily an Ask Me Anything question for this week, although I have been asked, numerous times, hey, Darryl, how can I get some Bitcoin? Well, I can tell you how you can get some Bitcoin at a very low cost. And one of the ways that they're able to give you the low cost is you do have to give up a little bit of your privacy. And I know that that seems antithetical to the purposes of Bitcoin, but really, if you go to any of the exchanges, and you've probably heard of Mt. Gox, that's the one that folded, but that was the biggest exchange for a long time, you had to give up some of your privacy to deal with them as well. And all of the exchanges that currently exist, you have to give up some of your privacy. You have to, show them like government stuff of I am who I say I am. But there are other ways. So you can go to, say, a Bitcoin vending machine. You input cash. Now, some of the Bitcoin vending machines also want to get a copy of your government ID. But these Bitcoin vending machines are going to charge you exorbitant fees. They're marking up the price of Bitcoin 5, 10, 15%. But with Coinbase, you can get Bitcoin for 1% plus a 15-cent transaction fee. And the way they're able to do this is you connect your bank account to your Coinbase account. You can, send the Bitcoin either way. You can buy it from your bank account. You can sell it, and the money gets direct deposited into your bank account. Now, if you want to get started with Coinbase, and I've been using them for several years, very happy with their service as well as their customer service, go to coinbase.fppradio.com. Now, make sure when you go to Coinbase, you type in that full URL that I just said, coinbase.fppradio.com, and that makes sure that after you've done a certain level of business with Coinbase, I wind up getting a commission for you becoming a new Coinbase customer. Now, there are thousands, tens of thousands of merchants that use Coinbase for merchant services. I have two companies that I use Coinbase as my merchant services company, the payment processor, if you will. Coinbase.fppradio.com. And don't forget, every Wednesday I answer your questions. Send those over, AMA@fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.